Alright then gang, so before we start coding a thing, I just want to address a couple of points. First of all, for this course, I'll be using VS Code as my text editor. So if you want to follow along exactly like me, feel free to go to code.visualstudio.com and download it right here. You can get it for Mac and Windows and it's really nice. However, feel free to use whatever text editor you wish, whether it be Atom, Sublime or something else entirely. That's fine. Secondly, for this course, I am also going to be using Materialize CSS to style our application and also just add in a bit of JavaScript functionality such as mobile menus, slide outs, that kind of thing. Now, Materialize CSS is a bit like Bootstrap, only it uses Google's material design philosophy instead of Bootstrap's design philosophy. Now, I'm not going to be going into great depth about Materialize in this course at all. I'm just using this to speed up the development of our shell of the application, if you like, the design of it. If you want to learn more about Materialize, I have a whole playlist on this channel dedicated to Materialize, so I'll leave that down below. But anyway, to get started with this, go to materializecss.com, click on Get Started, and what I did was download it right here, and that downloaded a zip file with all the files that we're going to need. Now, if we go to VS Code, we can see I've already started a project called PWA tutorial, and inside it several different folders and an index file. Now, by the way, if you didn't want to write all of this template out from scratch, then I suggest you go to the GitHub repo, the link is down below, and select branch lesson 2 right here. Then go to clone or download and click download zip. And that is going to download a zip folder with all of these course files in it, so the template is going to be ready and set up for you. For the rest of us, if you want to see how I've created this template, just watch the rest of this video. But I am going to be moving through it quite quickly because, like I said, I don't want the focus to be on Materialize or creating an HTML template. I want the focus to be on progressive web apps. So I want to get this done quite quickly. And for that reason, I'm going to be copying and pasting little snippets from my GitHub repo and then just walking you through them rather than coding everything out from scratch. Okay, so first of all, inside CSS, you'll notice I have the Materialize minimized CSS file. I got that from downloading it over here, like I said before. So I just popped that inside the CSS folder right here. I've also got a styles.css folder for any of our own styles, which we'll come to later on. Okay, so inside the image folder, I have this dish.png file. Again, you can get this from the repo. If you go to images right here, you can find this dish right here. And if you wanted to, you could right click and save that. Or again, you could just download the whole branch right here and clone or download. Okay, inside JS, we have the Materialize minimized JS library. Again, I got that from the folder I downloaded from Materialize. And we also have a UI.js file, and that is going to be for our own JavaScript to interact with the DOM, the UI of the application. So we'll come to that later. Finally, we have this pages folder, nothing in there at the minute, but we'll come to that later, and we have an index.html file. So first of all, what I'm going to do is type out doc and press tab to create just a doc boilerplate. Now I'm going to change this to Ninja Food. And by the way, this comes automatically then with this meta tag for the viewport and this other meta tag down here, which is nice. And now we need to preview this in a browser as we're developing it. So we can't just open this up in a browser by double clicking on the HTML file. For example, if I go to right click and then reveal an Explorer, and then it opens up in this Explorer right here. If I double click this now, then it's going to open it using the file protocol over here. Now, when we're using progressive web app technology, we need to serve our pages using the HTTP protocol. So we can't just double click on a file to open it. What we have to do is use a local development server. Now to do that, I'm using a package inside VS Code called Live Server. You can see it installed right here. If you want to install it, just search for Live Server up here and install that. Once you do have it installed, all we need to do to spin up a local development server is right click an index.html page or other HTML page and go to open with live server. And that is going to open up the file using the HTTP protocol. Okay, so then now we have that live server up and running, we can now start to flesh out this template. So like I said, I'm going to copy snippets from my GitHub repo and then explain them. So the first thing I'm going to do is just copy all the different references I have to different files and place it below the title right here. So we can see materialize icons, CSS and JS. So the first thing I do is link to the materialize CSS library, which is inside here. Then I link to the Google Fonts library. So that's a CDN. You can just copy and paste that from my repo, and that's so we can use the material icons, things like a cross icon or a delete icon or a pencil icon or whatever we want to use. So that's really nice. Then we have a link to our own styles.css, which is also inside the CSS folder. Then we have a link to the materialize JavaScript, which we have right here. Okay, so that's it for the head. Inside the body now, what I'd like to do first of all is give this body actually a class and set that equal to grey and lighten 4. So these are materialized classes. This is going to color the background and this is going to lighten the color of the background. So the next thing I'd like to do is the top navigation. So to do that, I'm going to just paste it in right here and scoot this back, and you can see we have a nav with a Z depth of 0. That flattens it out with no drop shadow. Then we have a div with a class of nav wrapper and container, materialized classes. Then we have this anchor tag, which is the title. We have a span tag below that with a class of right that positions it to the right of the nav, grey text and text darken 1, which darkens the text obviously. Then we have this I tag down here. Now whenever we want to use a material icon, because we loaded this font in up here, we use an I tag to display it, and we give it a class of material icons. Now this class right here, side nav trigger, is a materialized class, and we're going to hook that up later on with a bit of JavaScript so that this opens a menu. And the name of this icon that we're going to use is called menu. Now I've not just made this up, I got this from the materialize icons library, or the material icons library rather, from Google. Each icon has a different name. This one's called menu, and when we type menu there, it displays the little burger nav for us. Okay, so let me now just save this and preview so far, and we can see now we have the title over here and we have this thing over here as well. Now we'll neaten up the styles and the colors later on, but for now let's just carry on. So like I said, this is ultimately going to be opening up a side menu, and this thing right here, data target, that attribute is saying which ID to open. So we need to create a side navigation with this ID so that when we click on this, it's going to open up that side navigation when we hook up the JavaScript. So let me now just copy in this side navigation. And again, if you're getting lost here and you want to learn more about materialized CSS, check out that other playlist. The link, like I said, is down below. Okay, so we have a UL with an ID of side-menu. That was the target right here. It's also a class of side nav, materialized class, and side menu. That's our class. Inside, we just have a series of li tags. This one is the subheader saying Food Ninja. Then we have a few different links right here. This one is just / for the home page. Then we have / pages, which is this folder right here, / about. So we'll create that shortly. Then we have a divider, which is a materialized class again, just does a little line across the nav. Then we have this anchor tag going to / pages / contact.html. Again, we'll create that page shortly. And inside here, another icon, material icons. This time the icon is called mail_outline, and that creates a little envelope for us. And this one is for the contact page. So again, if we save this now and preview it, we're not actually going to see it on the page because Materialize styles this in such a way that it knows that it's a side nav. It hides it initially, and later when we initialize this functionality in the JavaScript, when we click on this icon, it's going to come out from the side. Okay? So anyway, let's move on for now. The next thing I'd like to do is the HTML template for all the recipes that we're going to show on our application. So remember, these were like little bubbles on the page, and each one had an image, a title, some ingredients, and then a little trash icon delete button. So let me paste these in. It's going to be a lot of code, and then let me just scoot this stuff back across. So we have a div to surround the whole thing called recipes, also container. So this is a materialized class. This one is our own class, so we can use it later on for our own styling or our own JavaScript. Then we have these classes, grey text and text darken 1. Inside, we're going to have a series of different card panels. So you can see This is just the same code repeated over and over again, and each one is a card panel. So the idea being that we're going to have a new card panel for each individual recipe. So each card panel also has a class of recipe, our own class, so that we can use it later in CSS or JavaScript. We're giving this a white background and it has a class of row. This is a materialized class right here to say this is a particular row of content. Okay, so inside we have an image, and that is the dish image right here. So I'm just linking to that. Then below that we have a div with a class of recipe details. That's my own class. And inside that we have two divs, one for the recipe title, and that's spelled incorrectly. And then we have one for the recipe ingredients. I'm not going to just correct this all over the show. But anyway, we have two divs. We have a recipe title and a recipe ingredients. And then at the bottom we have this div with a class of recipe delete. This is going to be the button we ultimately click to delete the recipe. Again, we're using an icon, material icons, and this says delete outline. So that is the icon we're using. So all I've done is basically copied this and pasted it over and over and over again down here. So we have a few different recipes on the page. And if we look at this, it looks something like this at the moment. Now I'm just going to inspect this so we can see it in kind of mobile view, if you like. And it looks okay at the minute, but still a bit cruddy. But don't worry, we're going to add our own CSS to this as well later on. So anyway, let's move on. Next, I want to do in the center at the bottom a little button with a plus icon, which is going to be for adding a new recipe. So let me copy this stuff in, and you can see this is just a div with a class of center to centralize the button inside an anchor tag. These classes right here are for creating buttons using the materialized library. We'll get rid of that one, we don't need that. It's going to be button small. And then add button. Again, this is going to be a side nav trigger. So much like this menu thing up here was a side nav trigger that's going to open a menu, so is this thing down here. And the thing that this is going to open is the side form. So it's going to be a separate side menu, and that will be a form inside to add a new recipe. We're using a material icons icon down here called add, which is a plus sign for that button. So again, if I save this and preview, we're going to see that at the bottom, hopefully, there. Okay, so now let's do that other side nav. I'm just going to copy this again from my repo and paste it in. This is the last thing for this page, at least, I think. So we have a div with an ID of side form. Remember, that was the ID that we targeted right here. Then we have a class of side nav, materialize, so it treats it as a side navigation, hides it to begin with. Then when we hook up the JavaScript later, it's going to open when we click on this button. So we also give this a class of side form for our own benefit, our own CSS, our own JavaScript later on. Inside we have a form. That has a class of add recipe, my own class, container and section from materialize. Then we have an H6 that says new recipe. And after that we have a divider. Then for each input field, we have a div of input field. So there's 3 of them in total. Inside each one, we have an input, and this has got a placeholder, an ID of title in this case, a type of text, a class of validate, that's a materialized class, so it validates the form for us and gives us some nice feedback. Then we have a label for title, and the for equals the ID up here, so that associates them with each other, and that is called recipe title. Same for down here, we have one for the ingredients, so placeholder, then an ID of ingredients, type of text, and then class validate. Then we have a label for ingredients called ingredients. Finally, we have a button here down at the bottom. That's the button we click to add this new recipe. So if I save this, again, we're not going to be able to see it on the screen because it's only going to show when we click this button later on. Okay, so the last thing we need to do down here is just hook up our own JavaScript file at the bottom of the body tag, which is this UI.js file. So let me just copy this from a repo. Really didn't need to do this because it's so short, but whatever, I'm super lazy. And now we have this linked to our file as well. So that is this index.html file pretty much done. Now, the next thing I want to do is just add the other files. So we have a contact page and also an about page. So let's make those quickly. About.html, both inside the pages folder. So new file, and this is called contact.html. And I'm just going to paste these in their entirety from my GitHub repo. So just give me a second. This first one over here is the contact. So let me go to contact and paste this in. Again, up here, we have all of these linked from the head. That's the CSS from Materialize, Material Icons, our own CSS, and the Materialize.js. Then we have this body with a class of gray, much like we did in the index page. Down here, we have the same top nav. We have the same side nav. We have the content now down here instead of the stuff we had in the index. So this is just a container, keeps everything within a central column. Then we have an H5, which is a class of center to put it in the middle, called contact us. Then just some lorem ipsum. Then we have a divider, and then just some address details down here. Finally, we have the UI.js file linked to the bottom as well. So let me just save that and go to /contact over here now. So /contact.html. And we should see this page, but we don't. So let me oops, that's because we need to go into pages first, then contact. And there we go, there's this page. So now we just need to do about.html. And again, I'm just going to grab this from my repo. So just give me a second here. Copy and paste. And here we go. So everything's the same in the head. Everything's the same in the top nav. The side nav's the same. The only thing different is this content down here. This time, class of container, grey text, an H5, about Food Ninja, and some lorem ipsum. Then we have this script at the bottom again to UI.js. So very, very simple pages here. Save that. And if we go to /pages /about.html this time, we should see this page as well. Phew. Okay. So we're 2/3 of the way there. The next thing I like to do is come to styles.css. And again, I'm just going to start to copy and paste a few different styles in here. Then I'm going to go through them. So let me just grab these from my repo and paste them in. So first of all, we have some variables here. We can use variables in CSS. If you don't know about those, I've got a whole series on CSS variables. It just allows us to specify some different colors, if you like, or properties at the top in the root element. Then we can use those later on by referencing these names. So we have a primary color, a secondary color, and also a title color. So first of all, the layout styles, we have a nav, and the background is going to be this variable right here. That's how we use the variable, which is this color, okay? We have a border bottom, which is 10 pixels solid, and a variable again, which is this one. So these are kind of like light oranges. Then we have the anchor tags inside the nav, text transform of uppercase. And again, we're using this variable, which is a dark orange for the title. And then we have the span inside the anchor tag, and that's going to have a font weight of bold. Then we have the side nav trigger, which is that little icon, and this is a margin of 0. Okay, so down here we have the recipe styles, which is the homepage content. So I'm just styling these a little bit better. Each card panel is going to have these styles to make it rounded, border radius, some padding, a little bit of box shadow to bring it away from the page. We're going to display it as grid so that the things inside can be displayed left to right easily. And these are the grid properties we're using right here. Again, if you want to learn more about CSS Grid, got a whole playlist right here on YouTube all about that. So feel free to check that out. The link is going to be down below. For now, I just don't want to lose focus of what we're trying to do here. Okay, so then we have the recipe images, and we're specifying the grid area based on this. So it's going to be on the left. We're giving it a max width of 60 pixels. Or pixels rather, not pixels. And then we have the recipe details. The grid area again is going to be details this time, margin top 6 pixels. Then the delete button, grid area delete, which is on the right, position absolute, and bottom and right 0 and 0, just to make it in the bottom right of the little bubble, if you like. Then we have the recipe delete icon, and we're giving it a font size. The title making bold, and the ingredients just reducing the font size to 0.8 ems. So finally, we have some form styles, which is on the left. Remember the little slide out, and that's going to have a background of that orange color. And by the way, that's the button at the bottom. Then we have the input field down here. That's going to have a box shadow of none to make it flat, and a WebKit box shadow of none as well. Then we're going to have the side form button itself, and that is going to be this color again, orange, and just a little drop shadow. And then finally, we're going to have the input fields all having a margin top of 30 pixels. So if I save all that and come over here, now we can see this looks a bit nicer over here. This still doesn't work because we've not hooked up the JavaScript yet. But if I now go to index.html, it's going to look a lot better. It's going to look like this. Okay, so that is looking good. The last thing we need to do is hook up this functionality over here so that when we click on one of these buttons, it opens up either a navigation to add a new recipe or the menu. So we're going to do that inside UI.js, and we're going to be using the materialize library to do this. So again, I'm just going to copy this from our repo, and we can see here, document.add event listener, DOM content loaded. So that's just waiting for all of the DOM contents in the browser to load before we do this. Then inside we fire a callback function when this occurs. First of all, we have the nav menu, and then we have the recipe form. So these are two different side navs, right? And we're getting all the menus first of all, and that is going to be document.querySelectAll side menu. So remember, inside index.html, if we scroll up, the menu we want to open is side menu. So it's getting anything with that class and storing it. So that's what we're doing. Then we're initializing a side nav using the materialize library, which is what M is, and we can use this because we loaded this in to the head up here. Okay. So we're saying use the side nav from the materialize library, then initialize this using the init method. We're passing in the menu, which we just grabbed up here, and this is an options object, and we're specifying where we want the menu to open up from. So I've said from the right. So when they click on this thing over here, we want the menu to open up from the right. Now I'm doing the same thing for the add recipe form. First of all, we're grabbing the form, the side nav that we want to open. In this case, it's going to be the side form. Again, if we look in index.html and come down, where is it? Side nav, it's not this. Is it at the bottom? It's this one, side form. This is what we want to open. So we're grabbing that, and then we're storing it in forms. Then we're initializing the side nav again using the init method. We're passing in the form and using this options object to say we want it to come in from the left this time. So from over here, it should be the right. When we click on this, it should come in from the left. So let me save this. Come over here. I'm going to hard refresh just for good measure and click on this button. And we can see this menu now. Click away to close it. This button for the add recipe form, and we can click away to close it. So there we go. This is all working now. And if we go to these different pages, they're working as well. So that's all really nice. And we can click on the logo over here to go back to the home page as well. And by the way I got this preview of a mobile device over here was by going to Chrome Tools first of all, and I did that by pressing Control, Shift and J. So if I do that over here, it's probably going to close it, you can see, and that opens it again. Then you click on this button up here to toggle the device toolbar. So if you click on that, then we get these different devices down here that you can select. So that's how I got this preview, and that's why it looks like this, a bit like a mobile device. So anyway, there we go. We have now our template set up, all of the different HTML that we're going to use and the different pages and the styles. I know I kind of sped through this, but I didn't want to get bogged down in all of this HTML, CSS, etc., because this is not really anything to do with a progressive web app yet. So apologies if this was going a bit quick, but again, you can get all of the course files for this template from the GitHub repo if you want to, or you can just watch this video again. But anyway, now we have this simple project set up with no real functionality yet, but now we can start to turn this into a progressive web application.